The United States has entered a new escalation in trade and maritime policy. As of October 14, 2025, the Trump administration's latest wave of tariffs on wood products has gone into effect, while equally bold charges are now being levied on foreign ships docking at US ports. The twin moves mark a sharp intensification of Washington's push to protect domestic industry and pressurize rivals, most notably China, in a fraught global trade environment. President Trump has defended the measures as necessary for the US forest and furniture industries. Under the new regime, raw lumber imported into the US faces a 10% tariff, while finished wood goods, kitchen cabinets, vanities, furniture are subject to a 25% rate initially. More aggressive levels, up to 50%, are scheduled to kick in from 2026 onward. Countries already bound by trade agreements with the US, such as the European Union, the United Kingdom and Japan, will be subject only to a general tariff rate, capped at 15%, explicitly exempting them from the harsher new duties. The administration contends that this structure protects allies while targeting the most disruptive import competition. Critics, however, label the approach arbitrary and warn it will raise costs for consumers and slow housing construction. The effect is expected to be especially severe for certain countries. Canada, as the biggest supplier of raw timber to the US, stands to be hit hard, while furniture exporters such as Mexico, Vietnam and China are likely to feel the heavier burden when it comes to finished goods. Industry analysts flag ripple effects on US home building, where rising import costs for cabinetry and finishing materials may stall residential construction projects. Thus, what might appear to be a lumber tariff has become a broader lever in the administration's trade arsenal, one tied to housing, manufacturing and foreign supply chains. Simultaneously, Washington has introduced a first-of-its-kind initiative aimed squarely at China's dominance in global shipbuilding, port entry fees on Chinese-operated or Chinese-built vessels docking at US ports. Under the new charges, a Chinese-owned ship must pay $50 per ton. A non-Chinese-owned but built-in China vessel pays $18 per ton. These fees will escalate over 3 years. The Port of Long Beach, the US, charges a fee every time a Chinese-built ship docks at any US harbor. $50 per ton if it's owned by a Chinese company and $18 if it's owned by a non-Chinese company. The fee will increase each year for the next 3 years. It's a first-of-its-kind measure meant to counter China's shipbuilding dominance and protect American shipyards. Because China accounts for the lion's share of new shipbuilding, the ramifications are vast. In 2024, China delivered 54.6% of global new ship capacity, with South Korea as the next closest competitor. That dominance means many of the container ships plying global routes originate in Chinese shipyards, even if vessel ownership is elsewhere. This dominance is real. Data from the UN shows that China delivered 54.6% of all new ship capacity in 2024. The next biggest producer is South Korea. This means a huge portion of the world fleet could be affected by the US fee. In practical terms, many shipping companies are expected to reroute their vessels, avoiding US ports altogether when built in China. In other words, carriers will reroute vessels to avoid US ports. There are plenty of other trade lines for those ships, but the disruption will be significant. Industry watchers at Alphaliner estimate that these port fees could cost the world's top 10 carriers as much as $3.2 billion in a single year. China did not respond meekly. As of October 14, 2025, Chinese authorities began collecting retaliatory port fees on US-linked vessels, those built in the US, flagged there, or operated by American companies. The charge is $56 per net ton per voyage. These countermeasures mark a direct tit-for-tat escalation. To make sense of how sharply the stakes have risen, it helps to look at shipping's role in global commerce. Roughly 80% of all traded goods move by sea. Decisions around port access, routing, fees, and build origin can ripple across supply chains, affecting exporters, consumers, and producers. In this environment, port fees become more than tariffs. They turn into instruments of statecraft. Industry insiders warn of multiple casualties. Exporters may lose access, manufacturers lose cost competitiveness, and consumers face rising prices. One analyst described the newly mutual port fee regime as one that risks harming exporters, producers, and consumers at a time when global trade is already under pressure.
Complicating matters further is the looming summit between Presidents Trump and Xi. While the two leaders are expected to meet in the coming weeks, this all is happening as the two leaders are getting set to meet. The timing means both sides will want to demonstrate leverage, making trade and port fees more than economic tools. They become bargaining chips. Amid this tension, the U.S. leader has attempted to dial down alarm, posting on social media, "Don't worry about China, it will be fine." But that reassurance followed recent threats of 100% tariffs on China and Beijing's tighter export controls on rare earth elements. As one commentator noted, these moves may reflect only the opening salvos in what is still, by many accounts, only the first year of this trade war. Meanwhile, with global trade under pressure from slowdowns, inflation, and lingering supply chain disruptions, introducing fresh disruptions at sea opens additional risk. The new fees may backfire if carriers reroute and global trade flows detour, undermining American export prospects just when the global economy is fragile. Underlying the current standoff is China's long-accumulated strength in shipbuilding, a dominance that many analysts view as both economic and strategic. Over the past 2 decades, China's share of global ship tonnage has soared from under 5% to more than 50% as of 2023. China's state-owned giants, like China State Shipbuilding Corporation, CSSC, now wield outsized influence, absorbing the former China Shipbuilding Industry Corporation, CSIC, in a major merger intended to consolidate capacity and competitiveness. In 2024, China was estimated to control roughly 53% of commercial shipbuilding globally, while the U.S. market share languished near 0.1%. One CSIS analysis pointed out that a single Chinese firm produced more tonnage in that year than all U.S. shipyards combined since the end of World War II. That scale and integration allow Chinese yards to offer efficiency, subsidized capital, and economies of scale unmatched elsewhere. The U.S., by contrast, has seen its shipbuilding sector shrivel, with very few commercial ships produced in recent years. That said, recent data suggests the tide might be shifting. In the first half of 2025, China's new orders plunged by 68% year-on-year, shrinking its share of global orders from approximately 75% to approximately 56%. South Korea, meanwhile, gained relative ground. While still dominant, China's yard order book is showing signs of strain. But for now, the cumulative weight of China's shipbuilding fleet is immense, and many of the world's ocean-going vessels were built there, regardless of ownership. That makes every policy aimed at penalizing Chinese-built ships potentially sweeping in impact. One key tension undergirding the entire episode is legal legitimacy. The U.S. tariffs on wood products are enabled via Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, which allows trade restrictions in the name of national security. Critics argue that the rationale is stretched, since the industries targeted are consumer-facing and not obviously military. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce warns these tariffs will raise costs and distort markets. Separately, the VOS selections decision raises doubts about the executive's power to impose sweeping tariffs via emergency powers, i.e. EPA. Though that ruling applied only to a specific batch of Liberation Day tariffs, it illustrates a larger legal constraint. Sweeping trade measures may invite judicial pushback. At sea, enforcement will also be complex. Ships may reroute, avoid U.S. ports, or seek exemptions. In fact, early reports show continued ordering of Chinese-built vessels by global shippers, despite the new U.S. port charges. According to CSIS and S&P Global data, Chinese shipyards retained roughly 53% of global ordering share through the first 8 months of 2025. That suggests the fees may not yet be a deterrent to shipbuilding demand, though routing decisions may evolve as costs bite. China's countermeasures include sanctions on U.S. subsidiaries of South Korea's Hanwha Ocean, reflecting the high stakes and expanding fronts of retaliation. As the world watches, the next few weeks and months will test whether the Trump-Xi summit becomes a moment of de-escalation or renewed confrontation. The new tariffs and docking fees place both sides under pressure to appear tough, while leaving room for face-saving diplomacy. If China relents and offers concessions, America may roll back or freeze further tariff increases. If not, the conflict could deepen, perhaps even extend to further export controls, particularly on strategic goods like rare earths and semiconductors. Indeed, Trump recently threatened 100% tariffs on Chinese goods beginning November 1st in retaliation for China's export controls on rare earth minerals. Still, the geopolitical stakes are high. Beyond the immediate trade fallout is the strategic ambition embedded in maritime dominion. China's military-civil fusion strategy links its commercial shipyards to naval buildup, giving it latent leverage over global sea lanes. If Washington views maritime dominance as a security threat, these port and tariff moves may escalate into defense posture, alliances, or investment in domestic shipbuilding. For now, the world is entering a new regime in which ships, their origin, ownership, and port access are not just tools of commerce, but instruments of state competition.